Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages. This is Tim May along with
Bill Rabinowitz.
Bill. What'd you get out of last week's game more than anything else? Let's just jump right into it. Cardale Jones got his 8th start of the season, struggled early, made a few plays late. The defense played great for 3 quarters, struggled in the 4th quarter, but they still come out with a win. That's what I got out of more than anything. They beat Minnesota and moved on.
Yeah, 2 things. One is all that matters at this point of the season is the win, which they did. They don't need the style points like they did last year because they're in good shape right now. And the other one was it's pretty obvious to me and most people that the offense runs a lot better with JT Barrett.
Yeah, and interesting was, though, I mean, I thought Minnesota had a really good defense. In my opinion, it was a talented group. They had a great scheme. They got after Ohio State, and obviously their main thing on their agenda was to stop Ezekiel Elliott, make them beat them with a wide game, and a couple of those missed passes early kind of screwed things up for the Buckeyes, but they did get things going when it mattered. The interesting thing is JT Barrett is back now. This is a stretch run, 3 games at Illinois, at home with Michigan State, and then at Michigan. They're really going to decide this team's fate. And like you said, JT Barrett's back. What does he bring more than anything else?
Well, he makes them 3-dimensional because he can, with that zone read threat, and he's just so good at it, and knowing when to keep it, when to let Elliott run it. It just gives them a 3rd dimension of their offense. It's not just Elliott, and it's not just the passing game. It's defenses have to account for JT Barrett.
Yeah, he is as fluid running the option as any quarterback I've seen here, and Kenny Guyton comes to mind as a guy that was really good at that too. Maybe it's the Texas upbringing, you think? I'm pretty fluid at it myself. Of course, I was born in Alabama, then raised in Texas, but I digress. Back to what we're talking about here. Yes, JT Barrett makes everybody on the front 7 accountable more than anything else. They can't just explode on certain areas. You've got to know that he can tuck the ball and run with it. Tuck and truck is what I like to call it. But the most interesting thing about JT Barrett, in my opinion, and he brought it up a couple of weeks ago, was this questioning. Not necessarily his ability to throw the football, his ability to throw the ball deep. I think he answered a lot of questions in his last outing at Rutgers. I think obviously that played on his mind a little bit, hearing some of the criticism of his game when we all were trying to decipher what's the difference between Cardale Jones and JT Barrett in the offseason. I think he stepped up and delivered just like he did a year ago as far as throwing the ball, and I expect more out of him. Depending on the weather conditions at Illinois Saturday, Illinois can be the world's greatest wind tunnel if the breeze is just barely blowing. But I expect the offense to be clicking on all cylinders again, as Taylor Decker was talking about earlier.
And there's no reason to think they can. I mean, Illinois can score, especially with Josh Ferguson back. They've got some playmakers. Wes Lunt's a decent quarterback, but they haven't really proven they can stop good teams. Purdue had 14 points, but Purdue is Purdue. So I don't think they have the team speed to be able to handle Ohio State. And if Braxton Miller is able to play, and Zach Smith just told us a little bit ago, he should be able to expect him to, with Michael Thomas, Jalen Marshall, it's pretty tough for me to envision that Illinois can really stop Ohio State.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how the defense pops back too, because they did a great job against the run. The one criticism of this Ohio State defense for a couple of 3-4 weeks was teams running the ball on them. I mean, basically the quarterback more than anybody else getting some plays done. And Mitch Leidner was a pretty decent running quarterback that Ohio State held at bay the other night. And they held him to like 33 yards rushing all the way into the 4th quarter. I mean, the rushing game was really not a part of it. And here you are going against a team that gained over 300 yards rushing last week in beating Purdue at Purdue, and that was a Purdue team coming off a upset win over Nebraska the week before. I think it's just. With this defense, it may be this way the rest of the year. Just when they answer this one question, all of a sudden they give up a couple, 3-4 big passes in the 4th quarter that made that Minnesota game more of a game than it needed to be.
Yeah, I looked at, when I watched the game last night, replay of it, the one sideline pass, I mean, that was a fluky play. 2 Ohio State defenders collided. It was a perfect pass on the run from Mitch Leidner to KJ May, who had a great game.
Yeah, what a great name, too, except for the E on the end.
Is he related to you?
I don't know. If he makes a lot of money, I might claim him.
But those kind of plays, you kind of go, well, that's football. So I don't think fundamentally that Ohio State has any real weaknesses. At least if they did, they shored them up last week.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I would disagree a little bit because a couple of 3-4 big plays, suddenly Minnesota was 1 touchdown down, and kicking an onside kick. I mean, that made that game a competitive game suddenly, and those are things you can't afford to do against really good teams. So we'll see how they shore things up as this goes along. The other interesting part that I was talking to some people earlier this week. Ezekiel Elliott once again moved his consecutive game streak of 100 yards plus to 14 last week on the same day when Leonard Fournette ran into but not through the University of Alabama defensive front. Tailor-made moment now for Ezekiel Elliott to make a move in the Heisman race.
No question. And the guy that's considered number 2 in the Heisman race, Jerome Boykin, had a tough game as well. So his stock has plummeted. So the opening is there, and Ohio State, obviously, with especially Michigan State and Michigan coming up, has an opportunity to showcase Ezekiel Elliott. If he has a couple of huge games, then this could be his moment.
Yeah, and you're exactly right about Boykin having the tough game last week in the surprise. Some people call it a surprising loss. I picked Oklahoma State in that game. Number one, I felt really confident in that. Number two, I need to make up ground in our pick'em contest. I'm running dead last. But you know what? You got to roll the dice at this point in the season and pick some upsets. I did pick Penn State to beat Northwestern, and they had them beat until the last 15, 20 seconds. So that's just the way that's just the way the ball bounces in this modern game of college football. You really don't know what's coming from one week to the next. That's why a 22-game win streak that Ohio State is riding right now is quite remarkable. When you look around the country and you see teams that don't quite bring their A game from one to the next, and I have these people all the time when I bring that up. They go, "Well, look who they're playing. They're playing the Big Ten." I go, "Yeah, look who they're playing." I mean, the Big Ten is actually more competitive than it's getting credit for, in my opinion. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, there's a stratification in the Big Ten. You have the top teams, and unfortunately, Ohio State hasn't played those teams in the West. They're not going to play Iowa until the championship game, assuming they're there. They don't play Wisconsin.
Well, let me interject. I picked Minnesota to win the West this year, so
I did.
So go ahead now.
Yeah, but Minnesota's a decent team. They lack playmakers except for KJ May. If they just had one or two other guys, if they had David Cobb again, they'd be a completely different team because Leidner is limited. He's good at what he does, but he's limited. So they just need a couple more playmakers. But on defense, they haven't given up 30 points all season, which in this day and age of college football, hats off to Minnesota for that. But Wisconsin's down a little bit. And Ohio State doesn't play Wisconsin or Northwestern. So it is hard to say how good,
or Iowa.
Well, hopefully Ohio State will play Iowa. But like you said, Tim, 22 in a row in this day and age. I don't care what you're playing. That's impressive. Urban Meyer is 4 streaks now as a coach of 20-game winning streaks, 47-3, best record in 100 years for a coach
in the first 50 games at a new school in the modern ages, like I said, because that kept getting chopped away as the weekend went on. Well, what about Dobie Giles or whatever his name was at Washington? I think his first win was over Everett High School when he was at Washington. I mean, he had 8 or 9 wins against high school teams and club teams, 5 or 10, 15 more wins over those kind of teams. And Fielding H. Hurry Up Yost, had a really good, remarkable start at Michigan, at the University of Michigan. He started at Ohio Wesleyan, by the way, a little trivia note. But, he had a remarkable start, but that was not the modern age of college football when every team you were playing was a big-time school. Of course, you could argue every team Ohio State plays now. But, at least you're FBS, Division I-A, and that's what that streak was about. But getting back to the point, this is a remarkable time I think Ohio State fans are living in. To have this kind of success on a continual basis is even Alabama struggled with that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Alabama lost to Ole Miss, which has lost 3 times, and you just look around and just fluky things happen. Florida State lost to Georgia Tech. Obviously, the Michigan State-Nebraska game was a strange ending, controversial ending, but Nebraska was in that game. It's if you put yourself in a position to lose on a fluke play, sometimes you lose on a fluke play, and so to not be in that situation very often is a testament to Ohio State. Obviously, the Indiana game, that was shaky at the end. The pass was thrown in the end zone, but that was just to tie it. So, like you said, any Ohio State fan who's criticizing Ohio State really is quibbling right now because the fact is everything they have is right in front of them still.
Yeah, it's funny how karma comes around to bite you. With Michigan State and the way they pulled off that win against Michigan on the final play, wow, that kept them in the conversation. But there were so many doubts after that game. There were so many doubts about Michigan State after the Rutgers game when they escaped at Rutgers. You know, we saw a game there 2 weeks ago when Ohio State dominated Rutgers in their own stadium. So, you know, you had your doubts about Michigan State, and like you said, they let a team that lost all these games, Nebraska, off to a horrid start, hang around, and then it comes down to a controversial play. Sometimes those controversial plays don't go your way, and Michigan State's now paying the price. Yet, if they could still be coming into Ohio Stadium in 2 weeks with a chance to still be a factor to win the East Division if they take care of business.
Yeah, they still control their destiny, because if they beat Ohio State, I think then it comes down to that tiebreaker, assuming depending on what happens with Ohio State and Michigan. But Michigan State still controls their destiny. But I look at them, and I haven't watched them that closely because they often play the same time as Ohio State. But what game have they played this year that makes you think that this is a dominating Michigan State game? Is there one game that they've played that you go, oh, that's the Michigan State team we thought we were going to see? Everybody
thought it was Oregon, but Oregon, of course, was still finding its way. And, of course, we've seen Oregon is not anywhere close to the team it was a year ago. Hey, and real quickly, what I was leading to there, though, is the first game I ever covered at Illinois, I helped cover the game there in 1983 when Ohio State went over there. I think they were number 8 or 9 in the country. It might have been higher than that. And Illinois was 19, and Illinois pulls the upset. It wasn't a particularly windy day, but Ohio State had some injuries they were dealing with and things like that. And, you know, Illinois has always been a weird place. I'm not going to say a tough place. It's always been a weird place for the Buckeyes, and at least since I've been around, and that's been a while, by the way. I don't know if you've noticed. And of course, Illinois had Ohio State's number there back in the late '80s, early '90s, mid '90s, and you know, I'll never forget Eddie George standing on the bench here in 1995 when Ohio State kind of like stopped Illinois' win streak in Ohio Stadium, and he's waving that towel. Whose house is this? Whose house is this? Because, you know, he was on his way to a Heisman Trophy there after running for 314 yards that day, and they did reestablish themselves. But I'm telling you, like you pointed out, you know, when our Inside the Beat, the 2007 game when Illinois came into Ohio State with Juice Williams, and Ohio State could not stop the quarterback sneak at the end of the game to get the ball back to have a shot to win. They're just – weird things happen when these two teams meet. Yeah, I remember the game in 2011, I think it was, in Illinois. Ohio State completed, was it one pass or two passes? Strange game. I think they completed one pass all game. The pass from Braxton Miller to Jake Stoneburner for the touchdown, I think. Correct. And so, yeah, Illinois is. It's just one of those, you go there, you just feel like a Halloween vibe kind of thing. It's just strange. Well, the early forecast I saw didn't seem to indicate there'd be much of a wind over there. But like I said, you get a 5-mile-an-hour wind, and suddenly it's going 30 in the stadium. As I pointed out on Wall to Wall Sports the other night, you know, if the Wright brothers had Illinois, had a Memorial Stadium to work in as their wind tunnel, they'd never gone to North Carolina. But I digress. We'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, next week with another installment of our podcast here to talk about what happened at Illinois and to look forward to one of the two games that clearly we're in the Buckeyes' sights going into this season when they come home to host Michigan State. And then, of course, following that is I've still thought all along, and it's kind of shaping up to be that way, I've always thought that the game at Michigan was going to be the decider for this football team. Yeah, I think so. You look at the way Michigan and Michigan State have played, and obviously the Michigan State-Michigan game ended bizarrely. But overall, Michigan has played better this year. They've just been a more solid team, and to go up there, Harbaugh's first Ohio State game, it's going to be crazy. Yeah. Well, until then, this is Tim May. And Bill Rabinowitz. Thanks for watching.